Overwatch YouTube, we need to have a talk. Because right now, the vast majority of conversations are very limited in their scope, and the discussions and debates in terms of balance are actually easily fixed with a different perspective on what it means to play Overwatch. Now, there are different playstyles in Overwatch, but there are also different perspectives. I want to first focus and then break down the difference between balancing the game versus a diversified set of playstyles on a game or in a game engine. What's happened over time is, well, originally Overwatch seemed to have unlimited potential. That was the first release of the game. And with very little marketing, everybody jumped on it because there was this opportunity to play anything that you can possibly play. If you were an MMO player, you would jump in because there are characters that match the MMO playstyle. If you were an FPS player, you jumped in because there were characters that matched an FPS playstyle. Well, over time, what the developers had tried to do is they've tried to build the platform in the same breath that they balance the game. And that's really difficult because every time they balance the game, they focus on a very specific playstyle and they leave out a whole bunch of extra players that loved playing the game for one reason or another. Now, I'm going to give you a few examples of playstyles, and I'll even give you a few examples of heroes that fit in that playstyle. There are variations of this, and there are simplified ways of viewing the game, but keep in mind every single one of these pockets has a type of player that likes a specific type of game. And Overwatch has the possibility of having them in the game as that player. But potentially, again, I'll go over why, that player has been pushed out because of the way the game has focused into a certain playstyle. So there's Brawl, for example, Reinhardt and Zarya are excellent examples of this. Dive, Winston, Diva. Poke being Pharah or Hanzo. Now, this is a little exception to a lot of pros categorization, but I'm still going to do it anyways. There's builders, so characters like Torbjorn and Symmetra that create objects, and now even Alari, that create objects in the world. There are infiltrators. This is going to be mostly Sombra, but you could consider characters like the old Wrecking Ball and Wrecking Ball in a way, and Tracer as infiltrators. There are sustain characters like Moira and Mercy. There are disruptors, for example, Mei and Lucio, and there are snipers, Widow and Ashe. Now, compositions are variations of those categories. Again, there may be some more categories that I've forgotten, and there may be ways to make them more efficient, but whenever you build your composition, you may have a bunch of Brawl characters with disruptors. You may have snipers with poke characters. And of course, most of the time we'll combine poke and sniper, but I think those are two separate roles. I can go over that a little bit later here. Now, if somebody comes into the game, let's say you take an MMO player. An MMO player is more used to Brawl combat. And if we balance for Brawl, then we are focusing on players who enjoy that specific type of gameplay. If we have somebody who loves sniper gameplay, then we are balancing for, well, we're balancing in reverse to those Brawl characters that are meant to just make fights last and to push enemy teams out. Where sniper, you're like a scalpel. You come in, you do a little prick, you win the fight, you complete the surgery, and you're out. Now, what happens, the kind of weird paradox, I don't even know if it's a paradox that we're living in right now, is that we're putting all of those players into one pile, and then we're balancing based off of everybody that's in that pile. Now, I know there are other game modes in Overwatch, but that's just due to the way the environment that Blizzard has set up. They've basically said you are playing one game only. When you jump in, there's quick play. There is competitive, which are the exact same-ish in the way that they're set up. And then there's variations of the exact same game type. In my opinion, and I'll asterisk this for a little bit later, in my opinion, there should be other games inside the Overwatch environment. We should have, in a way, if we could, and there is a player base for it because we end up losing all the players anyways, we should have some form of pool, competitive pool, that does talk about how good somebody is at shooting things. A way for players to engage in that kind of competitive spirit. There should also be a way for players to engage in more MMO style games. Again, the argument is there are custom games, there whatever. Custom games are framed as extras from the main game. What we could be doing, what we should be doing, is having a variety of game modes that may not all be perfect. Even too, you could give the developers levels of creativity to throw up their own game modes. And the problem is too, we're a closed walled garden environment, so other community members can't make their own variations of it. We can take, for example, I'll point out BattleBit. I've been loving this recently. They have community servers, community sets. You go into a new server, there's a new way of doing things. So what happens over time is you actually have a lot of different ways of playing the game. Those players will pull themselves into their own little bubble, and you are creating multiple games out of one service. We could take, for example, Counter-Strike being a variation of the Half-Life way of playing a game, right? These are mods that came out of original games because the playstyles in between the players within the environment were so different that those players made their own area, but Valve still profited and the games still grew under the one umbrella that is the, like I could say, the Half-Life universe. This absolutely could be the way that Blizzard went about running Overwatch, but they don't want to have that. They want to have the mindset where the game is their thing and everything is attached to that one game. Okay, so as somebody who spends a lot of time balancing for community events, as we do, if you haven't, guys, twitch.tv/Sulak_, we do weekly Sunday Scrub Club scraps. We do a variety of different fun game modes. I make changes, we break the game, do all that kind of stuff. As somebody who balances for my own community, I always have to ask myself, who am I balancing for? Because we have players who are really good at playing brawl characters. We have also people that are really good at playing disruptor characters. We have all our play styles. We have a lot of players that are good at the different sections of these style of play styles, that when I put together a game mode, I have to make sure that we're not only picking the right map, which is fun to play that play style, but the characters, I've either balanced them to that style of game mode that I want, or I just give the players free run to do whatever they want. Because I may have an idea of, like, I would like people to stay in a ball and dive and do some crazy stuff this way, but if the players don't want to play that, and they're not used to that on a different map, the people that I have there, their playstyle is going to clash with my intended balance. And they're not going to have a good time, and they're not going to show up the next week. The problem is when you only have that one layer of game mode, which is our weekly events, if I have 2 or 3 weeks where I picked a game mode that it isn't fun for somebody else, they're almost guaranteed to drop off. This is where Overwatch catches itself in a big pit, because if you only have one game mode and one type and you're intended to play the game in one specific way, one month you may piss off snipers. The next month you'll piss off snipers again. The next month they're out playing a different game. The next month you fix snipers, they're not going to be coming back at all. The month after that, you make it not fun for brawl tanks. Then the next month is not fun for brawl tanks. You lose all the brawl tanks, you're not getting the snipers back, and you're not getting the brawl tanks back. So Overwatch, by focusing ourselves on one layer, one path of a game mode, we've guaranteed that we're going to piss off everybody at least once. Now, the essence of Overwatch is that everybody can be a hero. That's the idea behind it. Anybody can be a hero. As long as you put your heart and soul into whatever you're doing and you do it the best, you should be able to be a hero. But if that's so, why are we so separate from every single other FPS game out there? Why, whenever I boot up Counter-Strike, and if I was even to mention Overwatch in a Counter-Strike game, people laugh and they mock you. In Overwatch, it feels like when you mention Counter-Strike or even Valorant, you're talking about a slightly more serious game, which shouldn't be it. Especially too with the engine, the environment, the storytelling, Every little bit of the game says anybody can be a hero. But we're selectively telling people they can't be heroes. So my final say on all this, and I'll say it over and over again, of course, is opening servers up, opening the community up. Hopefully, with the failure of Overwatch League, it means that the people who own Overwatch don't have such a tight hold on the game. Hopefully, crossing my fingers, it probably won't happen. They'll step back from the game a little bit and let the community build. Because what happens is if you let the community build their game, if you let the community do the balance, if you let the community develop their own systems, they will do things on a budget that Blizzard would never be able to do. They will be able to balance on a budget in ways that Blizzard would never be able to balance. I personally, every single week, can rebalance and test Overwatch with a new group of, with the same group of people, but with a new and fresh face every single week, much faster than Blizzard can. Or at least parallel to Blizzard. Because I don't have any policy and stuff holding me back. And the rest of the community is in the exact same way. Because they have not given us the opportunity to take the audience that we've pissed off. So let's say there are no longer any snipers in competitive because it's been balanced out that way. The community can't offload the snipers to a different section of the same game, keeping them in that ecosystem. We're just tossing them out. We're going, well, go to a different game, and when we update, come back and hope that you're there. So I do hope we can hit the dream one day where Overwatch is the arena for FPS for competitive players across the board. We want Overwatch to be the competitive game where MMO players, FPS players, RTS players, even RPG players, and like actual role-playing people can jump into our game, have a whole bunch of fun in any type of environment, and then have one central arena for everybody to come in and fight. So I hope that gives you guys some perspective, especially to how Overwatch's design clashes with the intent of Overwatch. I don't really have a full summary on it, but if you watch the whole thing, tell me in the comments below, guys. What do you think? Of course, subscribe the video. It helps get the information out there. And I hope, if we're in Overwatch for the long run, which a lot of us are, too long, sunken cost fallacy at this point, I think we can at least pressure and give Blizzard enough information to pick paths that are good for us. We need to give them options. We need to say, these are all the things that you can do. Because if anybody has spent any time in corporate, the best thing to do when you want to get something done is you go to your boss and you give him three different things, and one of them is the only good way of doing things. The other two are garbage. So the boss will feel like he has a choice. If you go with one thing, we say we do it or we don't, the boss is going to be like, I'm going to do it my way, because I think I know how to do it better. And that's the way Blizzard has set themselves up. So thank you guys for watching. Of course, subscribe, do all that. I'll see you later. Have a great one.